discuss on the topic of force majeure, a clause commonly used in commercial contracts to protect either parties from their contractual obligation due to an event or circumstance beyond their control. At this moment, force majeure is the most discussed and debated topic not only in Malaysia but around the world. Together with me, we have two speakers, Mr. Daman Sibalingam and Ms. Malini. And our goal today is to establish three key points. Firstly, is force majeure illegal to be adopted in an employment contract? Secondly, if it is not illegal, how do we then incorporate the force majeure clause in an employment contract? And thirdly, we would like to establish how do we sell this idea or gain the trust of employees with the revision in their employment contract if this could be adopted. My panelists today, Mr. Daman Sibalingam, the managing partner of Daman Sibalingam and Partners. He has more than 20 years experience in handling industrial relations and labor matters in court. And Ms. Malini, a HR consultant and former HR director of Pfizer. He has more than 20 years experience as well in the senior leadership team in various multinational companies. As a reminder, this session will go on for 45 minutes with a 15 minutes of Q&A. Please post your questions in the chat box below. Before we start, let me give you a background of force majeure. Force majeure is a French word for superior force or greater force. The principles of force majeure was first used in English court in 1863 in the case of Taylor versus Caldwell, an event organizer who wanted to rent a venue for a summer music festival. Prior to the event, the venue had an accidental fire, thus the event was not carried out. The English court decided that both parties could not carry out the event as circumstances were beyond their control and no fault of theirs. Therefore, the parties were excused of their contractual obligation under the contract. Let's now dig into the definition of force majeure. Firstly, from a general perspective, and secondly, from a legal perspective. I have here Mr. Daman and Ms. Malini. Welcome to So What Now.
Thank you.
Ms. Malini, could you share with us your perception or your general idea of what force majeure is all about?
Sure, Supra. So other than the fact that it's a hard to pronounce word sometimes, I think from my perspective, force majeure refers to something that is beyond your control. So natural situation, something like a tsunami or an earthquake, and things like war that would disrupt, your day-to-day activities and operations. So that would be my basic understanding of what it means.
Mr. Daman, what about the legal perspective?
Okay. Actually, the case that you even mentioned, right? It was a fire. So would you argue that that's an act of God? Probably not. It's human negligence or recklessness which led to that. So force majeure, from a legal perspective, the important aspect is that it must be an intervening event that was beyond the control of either parties. And as a result of the intervening event, it's such a huge incident that the parties cannot literally execute their contractual obligations. So those are the aspects which are legal, i.e. it's an intervening event beyond the control, as a result of which parties could not execute their obligations. But I'm sure later, as you will dive deeper, there is that act of God, what may not be an act of God, but which will be caught under force majeure. There are a few more topics that I'm sure we'll cover as we go along.